guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be fixing some of the problems that are on the 335i. I ran into an issue with the water pump going out recently, so I went ahead and got a new water pump and thermostat. That is the main thing here. I did get the upgraded Pierberg electric water pump. There's the part number. It comes with an aluminum housing, so it's less likely to break. We have just a regular Borg Warner water pump here. I believe this is a good OEM replacement. We also got the original BMW coolant that is concentrated, so you'll need some distilled water as well. I got that entire kit from FCP Euro for pretty close to 500 bucks. While we're at it, we're also going to do an oil change because it's been about a year since I last done it. The last stuff I put in was Castrol 5W40. It was really good. I never got any overheating issues when it came to oil temperatures, so I'm going to be using this. This is a Valvoline European full synthetic. It was a little bit cheaper, so I went ahead and went with that. We're also going to do a motor flush as well. I did this on my F-150 and it seemed to work pretty well. A new man filter, and because this is a 07, it does not have the factory oil cooler. So we have this oil cooler right here. It is G+. This is the manufacturer of the radiator here. It seems like a pretty good unit. It's decently heavy, it's painted, it's aluminum, so that is good. It does have the new fittings here that are an update over this kit. It's basically supposed to make this less likely to leak. We also got our lines here. They're braided 10 AN lines. And I got this off of I believe a 535i, but it has the N54 motor. It has a thermostat and everything in it. It's already got a new gasket here that I put in. I also got this oil filter cap off of eBay here. My old one was kind of leaking around the steel here, so I'm hoping that this one doesn't leak. But first off, let's go ahead and start on the most important thing, which is the thermostat and water pump. That is what is preventing me from driving this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock that out, and then we'll go into installing the new oil cooler. So I got the water pump out as well. I got the thermostat still in there because I want to get the orientation of the new thermostat with the hoses lined up perfectly. So I'm going to swap that out once I pull the other one out. But here is the two water pumps side by side. As you can see, this one's got an aluminum housing. This is the Pierberg upgraded, and this is the OEM VDO. I believe this is original. I don't see any date or anything on here. But my car does have about 80,000 miles, so this thing has lasted long enough. Let's go ahead and throw this thing in and see if it works. Here is the new Pierberg unit, the all aluminum electric water pump. All the hoses are connected to it. The water pump itself has one inlet and one outlet, which is right there, and the other one is very hard to get to, but is behind this connector. It's right there. Make sure those are all tightened. The thermostat has two inlets and two outlets. Has one right here that goes to the water pump, one behind that, which is right there. Let's see if I can focus. Right there, really hard to get to, but you can get to it when you remove this hose. And then in the front, it has two of them that use the BMW snap rings here. You can put them on and then just press them on and they'll stay. You can hear them click on. So one is right here, and then the other one is right here. So that should be it. I'm gonna leave everything else disconnected for now and go ahead and fill it up with coolant and do the bleeding procedure and make sure I have no leaks before I put everything back. So let's go ahead and fill this thing up. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start filling this up with the distilled water. I'm just putting 2 quarts in right now, and then I'll throw another 2 quarts in of the concentrated coolant. All right, here's a 50-50 mixture. So it's getting pretty dark here. I'm gonna go ahead and start the procedure that gets the water pump to start pumping without starting the engine, because I don't have the intercooler or the fans or anything like that. So go ahead and put your key in, and we'll go power on, and turn your heat all the way up, and then this on the lowest setting, the fan on the lowest setting, and then you'll just hold the gas pedal for 10 seconds. You should hear the electric water pump kick on at some point. There it goes. There's our dipstick, it's stuck down there. And you want to just keep filling this thing up as it gets low. It'll do its thing for about 10 minutes. It's actually been a couple weeks since you've seen that last clip. The car has given me no issues. I've cleared all the codes, and so far the car has given me no trouble. Although the other night I was with some friends and I flashed the car with my MHD tuner. I'll post a video on that soon. And I put the burbles on high, and the car started to overheat once I started driving it kind of crazy for a little while. I never got any warnings or anything, but the oil gauge was going past, I think, 250, which is more than what I'm used to seeing. So I think it's time to put on the oil cooler. I want to go ahead and mount everything up. So that means I'm gonna have to pull off the bumper and maybe even the wheels and jack this thing up to get this oil cooler mounted. This oil cooler that I purchased is actually an upgrade for the 335i's that have the factory oil cooler. Mine is not, so I don't have the mounting locations or even the fins in the back of the fender liner that the 335i's that have the factory oil cooler have. I'm actually going to have to mock this up and kind of figure out what I'm going to do. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this thing. You know, I had to let you guys hear the burbles. I've actually had MHD for about a year now. I've had this car for a really long time. I know these videos are really spread out, but I've never messed with the MHD map switching, and I didn't want to have the burbles on 24/7. And one day, my friend was like, let's go out and drive. And so I went ahead and figured all that out and got all the burbles kind of set to how I like them. And with the burbles comes a lot of heat. The 335i's actually have a oil temperature gauge, and I'll show you where exactly the temperature was at its peak. So on the tachometer here, you can see on the right down here, this is actually an oil temperature. This isn't coolant. A lot of people think this is the coolant temperature. This is actually oil. As you can see, it has a little oil can right there, old-fashioned one. But typically when you're just highway driving and just kind of driving normally, it won't exceed 210. And this is all in about 60 to 70 degree weather. If it's hotter, obviously it's gonna go higher. But that will be kind of its peak temperature. If you're driving it hard, not tuned, anything like that, it will probably be to about like 230. If you are tuned, it might go 10 degrees more. When you have burbles and you're driving it hard, I've seen it go as high as about 260. At that point, I kind of let it cool down. If I kept pushing it, I would assume it would just keep going. Burbles definitely are adding heat to the engine, and it's heating up that oil pretty good. Okay guys, I've spent like the hour to the last 2 hours trying to figure out where I want to mount this oil cooler. So as I mentioned before, mine does not have the factory oil cooler. I've done a lot of research, and to make this oil cooler kit fit without having the factory oil cooler, There's actually a bracket that is in here that is specific for the ones that have oil coolers. It's kind of like off to the side. It goes in between this bumper bar right here and the radiator support, and it actually has two studs that stick out like this, which allow you to mount in here. And you also need those grommets as well. There's also another bracket that is attached to the factory oil cooler. There's two grommets to go here and here, and there's actually a special stud that you put in there. You don't have to drill anything. And just for that little piece that's like a plastic thing with a threads in it is about $30. This I found for about $30 as well. I was thinking about just getting that, getting my own grommets. The grommets are like $10 a piece. And that oil cooler bracket that goes, snakes around up here, which is actually what bolts to the top of here and goes up to there. I can't even find that anywhere. I've looked on eBay and tried to just buy the cheapest oil cooler, and that's like $50. So to make this work, you literally have to spend like $100 or more. I'm gonna go ahead and do this the best way that I can. I'm not gonna be able to utilize this bracket, which kind of sucks because it has the fins and everything on the back, but I got a pretty good deal on this kit. I think it was only like $100. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and put this along here. I've already taken off the tire pressure sensor. It was right there. I want to mount this flush on here, although I want to get some like foam tape or something just to keep it away from the fender liner, just in case something, you know, a rock or heavy rock or something was to hit like that. I don't want it to damage it. So kind of sucks that I'm not able to use that bracket, but I still want to make this work. Summer's almost over, but with more mods and things coming in, it's going to start heating up even more. Zip tied up. So I was going to use the wire and it was just really awkward to use. It kept breaking on me. So I used some zip ties. This is probably just going to be a temporary mounting solution until I like actually get the parts that I need. But at least this will be in the spot that it needs to be, and all the lines will be ran to where they need to be for now. As you can see, the way that I had it hooked up, I'm not sure which way it's supposed to go, but I have the straight one here. All the other ones are 90 degrees. And I have it running underneath here, and then basically up in the middle here. It's hard to tell, but right in between the fan and the engine, and this is the line for that. As for the other one, I have the 90, like I said, going that way in between these two little legs here. It goes in between that, around, and then up. I might change it if I can see how to shorten this, because this is obviously way too long right here, because it's going to have to go like that. But I'll wait to cut anything and shorten it, because I want to wait until I get the actual filter on and see how everything fits. was actually the next day here, and I got straight to work getting the intake manifold off. The reason we have to do that is because there is actually one bolt right here that is being covered by this intake manifold. So we have to take this entire thing off. One thing that was really giving me trouble was this bracket right here that holds all of these wires. Now these 3 bolts connect to the bottom of the intake manifold. They're T25 Torx. They're extremely difficult to get out. I had to take the throttle body off, and I was hoping maybe to just pull these out. They don't do it. They're super tight. I don't know why BMW did this. They could have just made this like some kind of release mechanism here. But it doesn't do it at all. This is the bottom of the intake manifold. These are the 3 little studs that hold that bracket that holds the wires. These are the bolts. I'm probably going to figure out a different way of mounting that because that is such a pain in the ass to deal with. I've done this twice now, and I honestly kind of regret even connecting that. I know most people don't even connect this. They just let it sit here. It's not going to touch any metal or anything, but I'm going to try to figure out a solution to hold that. But anyways, let's go ahead and take this filter housing out. We're going to have to drain some of the coolant and also the oil, and then we can throw in the new filter housing. Bolts are going to 16 foot-pounds. This is what it's looking like so far. It's not too bad. This is kind of dirty and corroded, so I might try to clean that up once I get everything put back together. But I'm kind of excited to see what all this looks like once it's all plugged up. As you guys saw, I had the vacuum canisters removed because I'm actually painting that bracket. It was a little rusty, and it's also like a silver color, which doesn't match anything. I painted it a semi-gloss black, similar to the OEM power steering bracket. As for lines, I think I can go ahead and connect this one. It's slightly long, but I think it will be okay. This one, on the other hand, is a lot longer. I was planning on removing these, but the way to do that, you actually have to put it into a vise, and I've already tightened down the connections down there, so I don't really want to remove that. I'm thinking about snaking it around a different way, maybe around this coolant pipe and across here. That might pick up some of the slack. We'll try that out. I know there's no right way to route this, but I think I might have found the best way. Most of the times the lines run together, but this is actually how they're set up because there's 2 90s. I know some kits come with like a 45 degree where you would probably put right here so that it comes down like this and then wraps around. Hey, Moose, go away. I actually have it going from left to right, and I think honestly it would look pretty clean. So to get this to work, I actually had to remove the fans because I wanted to get this line specifically. This is the line that will route to the top. I wanted to get it away from the crank pulley because it could easily slide over here and hit it. But actually with this kit, and I think with most of them, they come with this little fitting right here that you actually put both of these hoses together too if you want to run them together. But I believe this is a transmission cooler line, and then I have it connected to the oil line, and what that does is it prevents this thing from rotating into the crank pulley. I did have zip ties on there, and then remembered that I actually have this, and that just works out perfectly. This line wraps down underneath the intercooler piping right there, or the turbo outlets, and then snakes back down underneath here. And the top one here, it's got a 90 going up to here, and then it will go in between the legs of the mount for the vacuum canisters. It will go in between that, down below it, along here, connect your connector here, and it wraps around like this, and then fits straight up here into another 90. I think that looks pretty clean. I'm not sure, this might honestly be the right way to route this because the hose is like the perfect length to do this, but I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these down. I believe they're 24 or 27. That way I have as much leverage as possible since I removed the fans, and then I'll go ahead and reinstall those. So these two Allen or hex bolts up here are actually for pre-filling the oil cooler. Once you take these loose, there is a crush washer in between each of them. I don't have that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and reuse them. If they do leak, I'll replace them, but for now I'm gonna go ahead and crack that loose and then fill that with some oil. So if you ask me which one is the feed and which one is the drain, I'd be lying if I told you which one it was. But I'm gonna go ahead and just fill up this side because the hose is actually lower and it looks like it will fill up the cooler faster. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm gonna be changing the oil on this thing, but I'm gonna go ahead and just put in some of the new oil because I don't need all of it, because I actually got 2 of these, which is 10 quarts total. But I use this just a little bit to fill up the oil filter and all that. So I would say it's probably at 3/4 of a quart. So if we can get it down to here, that means that this setup takes 3/4 of a quart. So we'll see. I think it's gonna take a little bit more, but I'll go ahead and start filling it up. Okay, so this side's pretty much stopped filling up. So I'm gonna try to pull it out without spilling too much. Okay, hopefully that doesn't leak. Now I'm gonna fill up the other side as much as it will go. Is that it? All right, so I'm not completely sure if it was completely full or not because there might be like a big air pocket in there. But I got both sides up to where they were filled, and then with a little bit of spillage, I would say that's probably pretty accurate with those estimates of 3/4 of a quart. So if you're getting the same 25-row oil cooler with the same length lines and everything like I did, expect to put 3/4 of a quart of extra oil in there. All right guys, so I have a bad problem of once I get an idea, I decided to go full on at it and not film it. But I found out a solution to mount this bracket right here instead of mounting it to the bottom of the intake manifold, which is just a pain to remove. This is what I came up with. Basically, what I measured right here was about 7 inches, then about 2.5, and then just a little bit, just enough to where, as you can see, this end right here can sit on that. This bracket just holds the starter wire. I have a bolt going through both of them, but you can look and nothing's really touching. The only thing that is pretty close is right here. But then again, this is the high pressure fuel pump. I don't think it will get super hot. And if it is, it's touching just a single ground wire. So nothing really to worry about there. I'm gonna go ahead and I already cleaned all these out. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the intake manifold off, button everything up. You guys could probably figure out how to do that on your own. After I get all that done, I'll show you guys what the finished product looks like. All right guys, everything's back together. I went ahead and did the bleeding procedure for the coolant here. So everything should be good. All the coils are plugged back in. I'm gonna go ahead. I should have kept the old oil filter in there because now I'm going to be filtering out all of the old oil. But those are cheap and easy to replace, so I might do that after I put the new oil in. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and start this thing. Hopefully we don't get any leaks. One thing I am gonna do is make sure I clean up all of this as well as I can. That way, if it is leaking, I can tell. Let's go ahead and start it. So good news, no leaks. The main thing I was worried about was these hoses right here. As you can see, there's a lot of play in there, but there is no leak on either side. Our connections by our radiator right here are all dry. I made sure I torqued these down pretty tight. I didn't strip them, but I bet you they're pretty damn close. So I did mention that I probably wasn't going to buy all the parts to basically mount that how it's supposed to be. Well, I actually changed my mind. I found the main piece that actually goes behind this rebar right here. And I believe I actually have some of those grommet pieces from a 5 Series that I'm rebuilding. So I'll just steal it from them. And then as for the bracket that goes on the top here, I'm probably going to make that and then tap in my own hole into the frame to mount the top of it. I figured it's probably not the best idea to have the radiator mounted to the fender liner like that because it is plastic. It probably will get hot. It has the potential of falling off, I guess, if it gets really hot. But then again, it's not getting the best cooling because it is mounted flush to the fender liner. In order for the radiator to cool at its best potential, it needs to have air that can pass through it. So that's why I kind of want to get this to work, but for now it will do a little bit of cooling. Like I mentioned, I'm gonna go ahead and change the oil. I'll show you the oil that I got here. Last time I used Castrol European 5W40. This stuff I found was a little bit cheaper. I've used Valvoline before. They're pretty good. They're a pretty good name brand, but this is 5W40. I probably could get away with 5W30 because winter is coming up. I also have the oil cooler, so the oil is not going to get as hot. The N54 does recommend 5W30, although for people that want to push their engine hard, 5W40 is preferred. Let's see if I can do this without getting oil all over my hands. Okay, so that was from the drain plug, but pretty much got it. I thought I was going crazy. I couldn't find my crush washer. And Moose actually took the bag. I found it out in the yard and I couldn't find the crush washer. So this is the only thing I have. It's just a rubber crush washer. I hope it's good, but we'll give it a shot. I hope I don't lose all my oil here. Fuck. So I had to make a quick trip to the store. This rubber washer right here was not cutting it. With barely any torque, it would just completely smash, and that was not going to work. And I guarantee you that was not going to seal. So I just went to Harbor Freight and just grabbed this 80 pack. It's just a large assortment. That way I never have this issue. So we'll go ahead and throw this in. Temperatures seem to hit a wall right about 230, which I believe is what the stock thermostat is set at. So I think the oil cooler is doing its job. It's about 230, and that's about as high as I can get it. The oil cooler is 100% doing its job, so I'm happy with that. I'm still gonna get the bracket and everything to mount it. Next video, we're installing some coilovers and some other suspension bits, so stay tuned for that. But with all that being said, guys, I hope you guys like this video and subscribe for more BMW content.